Hi, everyone. This is the Your Voice podcast. I'm Kay Helm, and I'm here today with Towera Loper, author of Girdle Girlfriends Lessons Learned from Girdles on How to Do Friendships. Hello, Towera. How are you
Hey,
doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you, Kay. How are you?
Doing great. Tawera and I met several years ago as our paths crossed in ministry. And Tawera, I've always enjoyed talking with you, but it's been a while. Catch me up and tell our listeners a little about yourself.
Yes. Kay, I know it's been a while, and I'm so glad that technology makes us reconnect again. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm Towera Loper. I was born and raised in Lusaka, Zambia, and that is south of Africa. Some say central, but I think it's south of Africa. I came to the United States in 1996 to pursue an education in Bible. I felt the Lord call me into ministry in 1993. And so the doors opened for me to come to the USA in 1996. And I thought I was going to be here for 4 years and then go back home, get married, have kids, and do ministry. And 21 years later, I'm still in America, married, of course, no kids, but it has been a joy, definitely seeing how God has led my path here and allowed me to do ministry in ways I never thought possible. I currently live in Tampa, Florida. I know we met in Virginia, Kay,
Right,
but
right.
it was I lived there for 15 years actually
Oh, I didn't
before
realize.
moving. It was 15 years, exactly. I first came and was in Rhode Island for 4 years, did my Bible school in Rhode Island, and then came to Virginia for 15 years, and then now I'm in Tampa, Florida. So that's a little bit about myself.
Okay, so Bible school, and
Yes.
then you've had some time in ministry. Now, I don't hear a lot in ministry about girdles. How did you end up writing a book about shapewear and friendships?
Isn't
How did those two fit together?
I'll tell you what, it's not even, I don't even think girdles are in the Bible. They could be, I don't know. We'll need to do some research on that. But it's
Maybe gird
interesting.
up.
Exactly. It's interesting, Kay, you say that because we normally had meetings on Wednesdays with my pastor, Pastor Janine Macbeth.
Mhm.
It used to be an hour, like from 12 to 1. And so we had ladies come together, just for the sake of fellowship, just getting to know one another.
Mhm.
And on this particular day, Pastor Janine was talking about the power of friendships amongst females,
Mhm.
and she then said, as I say in the book, that you need to have friends who are like girdles, they hold you tight and they don't let things spill out, they protect you. And we all laughed, like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. And it almost felt as though time stood still for me in that moment
Oh, wow.
because I was like, girdle, girlfriends. I'm like, wow. And honest to goodness truth, it's as though I saw a book and chapters being written right there and then. And I'm telling myself, this is crazy. This is not happening, and the feeling I could not shake off the feeling. And I remember after she was done with, the time we were together, I told her, I was like, Pastor Jean, you know what? When you said that, I almost felt as though I saw a book about good girlfriends. I don't know how it's going to pan out, but I just feel that
Mhm.
that is something that I'm going to write about. And she said, go for it, And that's how that whole thing came about. It wasn't like I was praying, God, give me a title of the book. I mean, I give credit to her that she is the one who was the inspiration behind that book. And so, as what most people do, I went on Facebook, did a post, and said, you know, Pastor Janine said this about friends and girlfriends. And the responses I began getting off that post was interesting. Some were like, oh, that's great. And then some were like, well, some girdles can really choke you and they can give you high blood pressure. I'm like, okay,
Oh.
wait a minute. I was coming from it from one angle, and now I'm beginning to see the different facets of how shapewear, in this case girdles, can either be for the good or for the bad, just depending on the type of girdle that you buy. And so
Right.
that's where that whole thing started.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
What a wonderful story. I mean, kinda have it drop in your lap like that, but,
Exactly.
a lot of people do kind of agonize over, "Well, I have this book in me, but I don't know what it is," and we spend,
Yeah.
a lot of time kind of in the "what is it"
Yeah.
place, and yet it just came. Tell me about that encouragement that you got from her, that reaction when you said, I see this book," and she encouraged you. What did that do for you?
It honestly boosted my confidence, number one, because in some cases, if you tell somebody you're going to do something because it was quote unquote their idea, you kind
Mhm.
of get pushback. They'll tell you, well, I'm the one who came up with that. So I'm the one who's supposed to run with that.
Mhm.
So for her to really encourage me and tell me, you know what, if you feel God has given you that burden to write the book and flash it out, by all means, you have my support. And that's why I was even so honored after I wrote it that she even did the forward for me,
Yes.
because she is, again, I cannot overemphasize the fact that she is the one who God used as an instrument to really make this book come alive. She gave me the skeleton of it. And I
Mhm.
just had to go there and just fill in the flesh and just make it holistic and hopefully bring about a message that would encourage, really authentic, healthy friendships amongst females.
It's an easy read, and I would encourage
Yeah.
people, it is uplifting and it's instructional. It'll make you think. You read a chapter and you'll think of people. Sometimes people, in my case, people that are currently in my life and people that have been in my
Yeah.
life in the
Yeah.
in the past, and so it's a good experience. Well, you can get it on iTunes. Can you get it on
Uh,
Amazon now?
You can get an Amazon as well.
Okay.
Yes, iTunes for those
Okay.
people who love to read, ebooks. It's on
Hmm.
iTunes. Definitely on Amazon. Absolutely.
Okay, great. I thought the format was really good.
Thank
So I'll
you.
kind of describe that. You have this quote at the beginning of the chapter, and then you tell there's a little bit about where you're going with it, and then there's the
Yeah.
relatable story, and that helps the reader, I think, really make a connection with how this plays out in a friendship, and you take one aspect at a
Yeah.
time, which I think makes it um, easy to follow. How did you come up with that format?
That's a good question. I remember, when you get emails telling you about, you know, publishers who want to do, your book.
Hmm.
So I forget what publisher called me because I was, fishing, seeing, okay, how do I run? Now that I have the idea, I will need to begin to look for people to publish the book.
Hmm.
And one of them called me back. And so she asked me what the book was about. And she then told me to say, you know how this book is going to be relatable. That's where that relatable story comes
Okay.
in. You know, is get stories of your friends or people that you know. Don't
Mhm.
just make it as though it's just all instruction because people connect with stories. People
Yes.
connect with someone who's gone through something they're through.
Mhm.
So interview some friends, talk to them, and based on what they tell you, then let that be the relatable connection. So I was like, okay. The term relatable stuck with me.
Mhm.
One of my good friends, Tina Manley, again, one of my friends who I just share most of my life with, had known about the book. And so she also encouraged me to say, hey, do a research on shapewear girdles and kind of find out what are some of the things that make it beneficial, what are some of the things that make it, you know, um, challenging to wear shapewear, I guess.
Right.
So the more I did this whole research, the more I, looked at, I think in the book, I also talk about, the Mayo Clinic and some of the aspects to talk about girdles, I think, or friendships.
Mhm.
The more I did research, the more I just found that this thing keeps on unpacking. It's like a like peeling of an onion. It's layers and layers upon layers. And so based on what a girdle would bring to a female's body, and then trying to find how that relates to our day-to-day friendships with females.
Mm-hmm.
I then tied in that whole relatable piece along with the girdle and how that works in friendships. So again, credit to the publisher who wanted me to expand my idea, not just be single-minded, but broaden your thought process and see, hey, who can I bring into the conversation who can hopefully make it better.
Now that's really interesting. I think that you say that. Who can I bring in to the conversation? Who can
Mhm.
make it
Yeah.
better? I think that there's a belief out there that says someone who's creating something has to do it alone, has to
Mm.
guard it, has
Mhm.
to mull over it. And
Yeah.
what would you say about that? The difference in those two, that the belief and what you experienced.
I have heard that a lot, Kate, and especially, as someone being in ministry,
Mhm.
so to say, the idea that it's your baby, protect it, run with it, don't let anyone be a part of it because down the road they're going to steal your thunder. I've heard it,
Mhm.
you know, but I have to be true to who I am as a person because I am one person who just wants to learn from others and to
Mhm.
grow from others and with others. So I don't subscribe to that off the bat. I realize that God has made us relational beings, and no man is an island. We've heard that saying several times, but
Mhm.
sometimes we live like islands, right?
True.
So for me, I'm like, listen, there's an island. How many of us can get on it, and how many of us can make it better? Even with saying, like, let's just make it better, because at the end of the day, I benefit from you, I grow from you, and vice versa. So if I can be an encouragement, if I can be of influence, and you can do the same for me, why am I holding on to ideas? Why it's meant to be shared, right? So let's just do this and let's make it happen.
And you did that right from the beginning. I mean, you talked with Pastor Janine,
Correct.
and she said run with that, and so she was a part of it. And then you took it to social media. You
Yep.
got the responses that caused you to go deeper and caused you to look at it in a new way.
Yep.
That added another dimension to what you were doing, and then you were willing to hear the input from somebody with more influence in the field,
Yep.
with how to put a book together. And so you took advice from a friend, and all
Yes.
along the way you saw people coming in and being a part of that. The whole book's about
That's it.
relationships, so the process of the book is also about
Really?
relationships. What a
Exactly.
beautiful, it would be strange if you wrote a book about relationships and said I'm gonna lock myself in my room for 3 months and not be around anybody.
And isn't that something? I mean, if tables were turned, Kay, and Pastor Janine didn't give me, or maybe she did give me the thumbs up to run with it, and then the publisher gives me an idea, and I bark at it and say, no, that's not going to work. Or Tina tells me, hey, think about this, and I'm like, no, that's not going to work. We would not be where we are today. But because I opened myself up to receive, and knowing that this is the first time I'm doing this, I'm not expert at this, I need every help I can get, it's what makes Good or Girlfriends, I think, a good book, in my opinion. I know I wrote this, I have to be biased.
It is a good book. I'll I'll
So,
I'll be right there
well,
with you.
thank you, Kay. I
I
appreciate
believe it's
that.
a good book.
Thank you.
I think that's really going to help the people listening. That's what I hope, is that in every episode of this podcast that you, the listener,
Yeah.
get
Yes, ma'am.
something you can use from it. And I think that insight, your walk as a first time author, right?
Yeah.
And the way that you were teachable and
Yeah.
relationable in it is a great example. I think we take these projects and make them big, and they're big, and they are big, and they're difficult, and it's a process, but you don't have to go it alone. I do want to talk a little bit about the content of the book itself, because I think, we said, well,
Okay.
how do girls, what do they have to do with relationships? But my particular chapter that stood out to me was the muffin top concealer. that just sounds cool anyway, right? I mean, so I think the muffin top is that little piece that kind of rolls over the waist of your
Hmm.
jeans, or
Yes.
right? So tell me a little bit about a muffin top concealer in friendships and shapewear.
We all have we all have issues in life, right? No one is
Yes.
perfect. No one. If I find someone perfect, please, I need to connect with you. I may be perfect down the road too, you know. But my thing is, we all have issues, and you're hoping that you have friends who don't celebrate your issues in ways where it becomes destructive. What do I mean by that?
Mm,
If I come to you, Kay, and I say, hey, Kay, I'm struggling with substance abuse, I'm hoping as a friend that you would conceal my struggles. It's between you and me, right? I'm confiding in
right.
you and saying, this is my struggle. How can you help me?
Hmm.
It becomes a problem when you now, Kay, go and tell 5 other people that my struggle is substance abuse.
Right.
At that point in time, you have not protected me. You have not become my muffin top concealer. Instead, you have chosen to put me on blast. And I
Hmm.
think that's where it a friendship becomes problematic. I heard one of the pastors say, Pastor Darius Daniels from Chain Church, New Jersey. He said, if I trust you with something, it doesn't mean that I'm trusting you to tell people that you trust about my
Yes.
issues. It's between you and me.
Hmm.
And it needs to end there. And I don't think we've learned that art. I've been guilty, of that too. So I'm not gonna, talk here and say, "Oh, I never did that." I became more aware that that's not the way we do friendships. Because if I share something, I'm hoping you're going to protect it. And so if I don't like the idea of it being done to me, why should I do it to others? So when we confide in each other, my heart, my prayer is that we keep it amongst ourselves and don't use prayer to go tell someone else. Let's pray about it.
Yes.
Please don't.
And I think the intention is probably good there, but the effect is not so healthy.
Exactly. It's almost, what is the motive behind it? We
Mhm.
can justify reasons why, but at the end of the day, it goes back to, if I've shared something with you in confidence, please keep it that way.
Mhm.
And if you cannot, then this friendship may not be a good fit. You may not be the
Right.
girdle that I need, so I may need to put a pause on that friendship and reconsider, what next steps I need to do, and that's protecting myself from you as a friend.
Right.
Yeah,
And that's good advice for people on either side of that friendship.
exactly, exactly.
Now, one thing that really stood out to me was one of your storytellers said that meaningful friendships were sacred.
Mm.
And so I want to ask you about that. What's your definition of a meaningful friendship and what makes it sacred?
I think meaningful friendship is a friendship that has similar core values. If, again, going back, piggybacking a little bit on the muffin top concealer, if my core value is not to gossip, and if I find another friend or I've discovered a friend who shares that value with me, that is a meaningful friendship, because then we can relate on a level that we both understand that these are our boundaries. We won't break these boundaries between the two of us, or not only between the two of us, just in general, because we just don't believe that gossip is a good thing to do. What makes it sacred is because we live by that quote unquote law. I don't want to call it like a law because it sounds very legalistic, but we live by those values. We are shaped by those values. That's what makes friendship sacred. That's what, if I can even maybe use an example of marriage, that's what makes marriage sacred. If you stay within your vows, once you violate those things, then it ceases to be sacred. And so it is with meaningful friendships. Granted, we're not going to think the same at all times, but if we both understand what our boundaries are and we respect each other's boundaries, that in itself is meaningful. And in turn, it becomes sacred. The minute I begin to undermine your boundaries and your core values and what you stand for, at that point in time, that friendship ceases to be meaningful and the sacred part of it becomes irrelevant. That's my take from that statement.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. And I think, just listening to that, there's a lot of pain when those lines are crossed, those
Yes.
boundaries are violated, and sacred is never surface.
Yeah.
It cuts deep, and
Yep.
so when it is respected, it elevates everything
Exactly.
it touches, and when it is violated, it pulls everything down. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes we take our friendships very lightly, and so that was
And
beautiful.
and that's the thing, Kay. Familiarity. I'm so familiar with you that I take it for granted. And then we just again don't protect we don't protect each other in those friendships. So it's just critical to understand not to be too, I mean, we can be familiar, but don't be too familiar to the point where
Mm-hmm.
we take each other for granted.
Right.
Absolutely not.
That's so true. Can you take us out with one final thought?
I love the first question you asked me, and how did this girlfriend title or book come about? And I think sometimes, Kay, we complicate the process of calling, I think, or purpose. Sometimes it's just found in the most mundane day-to-day living. And as easy as it was for me to hear my pastor speak and that idea be birthed, I have maybe 2 or 3 other books in me of saying someone said, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to run with that. And I've
Yes.
began writing on 2 already. I won't tell you what until it's done.
Okay.
But
Good. We'll be
you
happy to
know,
hear about it.
but my point being, it's just in the day to day, everyday living that God speaks, that you're able to connect the purpose. So sometimes don't overthink it. It's just in the most simplest way that you can discover what it is that at least you can connect to and you're called to do. So run with it, don't overthink it, and before you know it, you could be an author, you could be an engineer, you could be a doctor, you could be a nurse, who knows? But just realize that sometimes it's in the simple things of life that you can really hear what God is calling you to do and to become.
And that is some truth right there. Towera Loper, author, Girdle Girlfriends, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me on, Kay. I greatly appreciate you giving me this opportunity to share my heart and just to share a little bit about my life. I really, really appreciate that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been the Your Voice podcast. Find your voice, tell your story, change the world. Until next time, this is Kay Helm.